So hello, good afternoon. My name is Talia Brun and I work for CINEA, the Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency. As you've heard several times, the agency focuses on supporting the implementation of programs that work to implement the Green Deal. And in particular, one of those programs is the LIFE program. And I work in that program since 2021. There's a new leg to the LIFE program that is really devoted to the clean energy transition. We call it LIFE-SET. This LIFE-SET program really is intending to remove the non-technical barriers to the energy transition. It's the ideas or the types of calls that we are funding within this program are not new. They kind of they take the relay from the work that was done under Intelligent Energy Europe first, and then under the energy efficiency part of Horizon 2020. But now we are under LIFE-SET, and there are these annual calls that I encourage you very strongly to look at, because there's a lot of interesting funding opportunities there. And so since Intelligent Energy Europe, and now for many years, we've been supporting projects that focus on mitigating energy poverty. And today we have one of those projects here, Comact, which focuses on the hard measures, so energy efficiency investments in buildings. Comact is a very special project because it focuses on Eastern and Central Europe, also the former Soviet Union republics. And in these regions, energy poverty has very specific characteristics. Most of the households affected by energy poverty are owner-occupiers. They also live in multi-family apartment buildings. And if you've been attending sessions this afternoon, you've seen that these are really challenging. This is a really challenging type of building to renovate, and in an energy poverty context even more so, because financing mechanisms and tools need to be adapted to families with a limited budget, right? So I'm very happy that this project is being presented today. I will not speak about it more. I will pass the floor to Yuri Shumergi from Habitat from Humanity. He's Associate Director. He's been almost 20 years working in housing policy and advocacy at national and European level, and they are coordinating Comact. So Yuri, the floor is yours. Tell us all about Comact.
Thank you, Talia, and hi everyone. Thanks for coming after an exhausting day for the last session. I'm representing the Comact project, and also I welcome in the room some of our project partners. Kestutis Kupsis from Lithuania and Dragomir Cenev from NFEC Bulgaria. Thanks for coming. Comact stands for Community Tailored Actions for Energy Poverty Mitigation. So we are really focusing on the connection between renovating buildings and energy poverty, and especially renovating owner-occupied multi-apartment buildings, which is a very specific challenge. It's not a unique challenge to Central and Eastern Europe, because in the previous sessions we heard about Italian, Spanish, German examples of the same challenge, but the magnitude of the problem and the historically defined difficulties really makes it the housing problem which impacts most people in Central and Eastern Europe. The outline of my presentation, that I will talk briefly about the Comact project, and then I will follow the logic of the Comact project, which is about how to specifically identify energy poor in a multi-apartment building, how to activate the community. We heard it several times during the day that the key and first bottleneck of scaling up renovations in owner-occupied multi-apartment buildings happens at the community level, at the homeowner association level. And as we will hear from many examples, sometimes there is financing, there is technology, there is everything, the policy is there, but if the homeowners cannot agree on a renovation, then nothing will happen. We will talk about, we will talk about financing, technical solutions, a case study, our impact, and with some policy recommendations. So the context, probably many of you know that in the early 90s, there was a huge privatization wave in the former socialist countries, and these big buildings, which were usually run by the government, and these were basically part of the social housing stock or the government housing stock, and the sitting tenants were offered to pay these flats at a very reduced price in most of the countries. And that's why we ended up with very high ownership rates in countries from Poland to Uzbekistan and from Latvia to Serbia. And homeownership rates are usually beyond 95% in these countries. So there is no social housing stock or very little. And that's why sometimes we say that we ended up being the societies of poor homeowners. It poses a lot of challenge when it comes to renovation, because, as I said, homeowners have to come together and make a decision about their common property, and awareness about energy efficiency and the benefits of it is lower. So that's our context in Central and Eastern Europe. Comact is funded by Horizon 2020 with 2 million euros for 3 years. Habitat for Humanity International, which I represent, is the coordinator. We have 5 pilots in Hungary, Bulgaria, Lithuania, North Macedonia, and Ukraine. And it is built on the experience of previous projects. And from Habitat's perspective, it's built on a USAID-funded project, RELY, and also an informal group, what we call Community of Practice for Residential Energy Efficiency. These are the partners, and it's an interesting group of project implementers, think tanks, NGOs, municipalities, and even a consumers organization from Lithuania. This is what we call, I believe, the ecosystem of residential energy efficiency, where in the middle you have the energy poverty affected households in the multi-apartment buildings. And we try to picture all the actors in this. And our main message is that it's a complicated system where somebody needs to connect the different actors. Somebody has to do the facilitation. And many of our project partners are doing this in the pilots to connect the homeowners with the municipality, with the financing institution, with government, and also helping the homeowner association to function well. And the main objective of the project is what we call affordable low-cost house solutions for high energy efficiency driven by community action. It sounds very commonplace, but I think each word has a meaning there, because the Comact project, out of these 2 million euros from the Commission, we can only focus on low-cost solutions, which is basically what usually we call creating an enabling environment for scaling up renovations. And it has several aspects like financing or technical solutions or community facilitation. And then there are some pilot renovations planned to take place in the pilot countries, but the renovation itself is funded by this EU project, and especially the long-term impact of the project and the scaling up of the renovation will come in the coming years, because what the project is able to do is to produce a lot of educational materials, create local one-stop shops, or what we call resource centers, with the assumption that if they are well functioned and if they are well skilled with all this knowledge what we produce during the project, eventually it will lead to scaling up renovation in these countries. I mentioned already the 3 dimensions and the 5 pilots. And the innovative part of this, as I said, to combine the energy poverty and the multi-apartment building, this is a very typical picture of a meeting of a homeowner association. I think it was taken in North Macedonia. And that's the key issue, how to mobilize these people to make the decision and to go for and take the risk of paying for a renovation together. I think that's also, once again, how the whole project works. And pilot implementation is, I think by pilot we mean establishing the one-stop shops or resource center, but also renovating a couple of small number of buildings in the project countries. The first challenge, and that's I think where this project is really innovative, to try to get away from the hopeless struggle of defining energy poverty and relying on national statistics of energy poverty, which are all relevant for in the grand scheme and on the national policymaking context. But if you really want to understand, if you have a building of 100 flats, if you want to understand who are the energy poor in that building and how many of the residents of a big building are energy poor, these national levels statistics and national definitions not really helping you. So that's why what we did, we conducted a survey in all the pilot countries to better understand who we are dealing with. And some of the highlights of this survey is that it's very interesting that it's clear that the elderly are overrepresented in many of these buildings. And also the single-person households, the share of single-person households are very high. District heating is a big impact factor here, that what can you do with in a big building where you depend on district heating systems. What type of energy poverty you are facing in the different countries. And what we found is that it's much more of an income issue than an energy issue, the general income issue in these buildings. And as we said, the elderly are very much impacted, or elderly women are very much impacted in these buildings. And very interestingly, the number of children in a family doesn't really impact your energy poverty situation. At least that's what the study found. The next step, what we did in this project so far is what a lot of projects were discussing this, that we need to work with the community. And for that, we developed certain tools, both for activating the community and also create local stakeholder groups. And all these Comact branded pictures are actual documents the project produced in the last 2 years, and they are all available in the project website. But the main thing is that we believe that we can capacitate the one-stop shops with all these knowledge products coming out of the project. Yeah, I mentioned these, the resource centers and the local stakeholder groups. And this is the heart and core of the Comact project, to sit down with the community and led them through the renovation process, help them do the decision making by establishing the resource centers. I think you can see pictures from here, all the 5 implementing countries. On the right-hand side, that's the Odessa group. And in the middle, you have Lithuania. The mayor in one city is just committing to establish the resource center. Financing schemes. That's the other thing that I think our colleagues from NFECT were mostly engaged in this. By this, we mean that we did 2 analyses. One is the analysis regionally about available energy efficiency programs by governments, to analyze what are the best practices, what we can learn, what can be replicated from this, and we captured it in a big study. And then we analyzed the possible funding schemes in the 5 project pilot countries. And one of the product of this toolbox of financing models for energy poor households in multi-apartment buildings. So that's basically a regional desk research and comparative research with lots of learnings. But what is more relevant for very practical reasons, the analysis, what is available and what should be done in the 5 countries. And it's very different. You can imagine starting with Ukraine. In Odessa, their biggest headache is not now to develop financing models for multi-apartment buildings. In Hungary, the government is not very open to any financing of renovating buildings. On the other end of the spectrum, in Lithuania, the question is not to develop a new financing model, but how to make the homeowner associations capable of applying for a well-functioning existing financing model. In Bulgaria, there has been a big government program of giving 100% subsidy for energy efficiency renovations. And our colleagues now developed a new proposal how to change that and how to make it sustainable. And probably it will be adopted very soon. And then multi-apartment buildings and communities can apply for that new funding. And in North Macedonia, the funding is expected to come more from the municipal level than from the national level. So it's very different, even in this sub-region of Europe, the financing status. That's why we had to do this comparison and dig deep into the possibilities. And then there are the technical solution. We are Bosnian partner and energy engineering firm helped us develop all kinds of technical analysis tools to visit buildings and assess what could be done and what should be done, how much it would cost, with all kinds of approaches and developing scenarios and also telling what could be the price of those scenarios using thermography and also coming up with a detailed analysis. And this is all captured, this is all captured, I think, in this publication, there was, that's the publication in the middle. I don't see it from here, but that's where we captured all the learnings from. So this is, again, yet another knowledge product which we can give to the resource centers to help advise the homeowner associations. This is just an illustration of how buildings look before and after renovation, and these are the typical neighborhoods and communities we are dealing with. And I would skip this one. And one thing is that we produced these knowledge products to capacitate the one-stop shops and resource centers. The other is that we create this brochures which are directing the target group of the renovation. So these are educational materials which produced in several languages. And on the left-hand side, I think it's the resource center in Skopje, where if people go into the resource centers, they are given these educational resources. Also, we created e-learning options, again, mostly for the resource centers. And then I just want to briefly talk about the case, the Lithuanian case, how our colleagues and partners engaged in 2 communities in Lithuania. And I will talk about the Kaišiadorys case, where there was an issue with how to convince the homeowners about renovation. And then our partners came in, started negotiations with the city leadership, organized these community meetings, and people could meet a lot of representatives, both from the city and from the project partners. There was some fun element with this performer, and this is when the mayor commits to establish the resource center. And as it is described here under Kaišiadorys, it was a typical example whether what's the real bottleneck. The real bottleneck was that there was one homeowner who could block the whole renovation process, and our partners came in, started the facilitation, and convinced this one homeowner to consent, give the consent to the renovation. That's a typical case that financing was available, the technology is there, but if this one person cannot be convinced, then it can block the whole process. Is it a correct thing? Okay. Impact. Of course, we want to contribute to the EU targets. So there are, we have projections of how much savings our project will trigger long term, how much reduction of greenhouse gases, how much investment in sustainable energy. But what I really want to show you is the number of buildings we are planning to renovate within the project, and how many people live in those buildings. And so that's the estimate. And what are the long-term figures, that this is our assumption that beyond the project, if we manage to establish successfully the resource centers and keep them sustainable, then it will lead to this amount of renovations and impacting this amount of people. Some of the key lessons, okay, I still have some time. The key lessons is that the municipality is a very important player. It's a tricky thing because these are privately owned buildings. So in theory, the municipality has nothing to do with the renovation of privately owned buildings. But it's clear that politically, it's not a good situation if most of your voters are unhappy because their building is not renovated. So you can easily make a political argument to the mayor or the leadership that it is good for them if they engage, but also for the long-term sustainability of these interventions and the long-term sustainability of the resource centers and one-stop shops. We believe that probably the most viable option is if the resource centers and the one-stop shops are becoming part of the official municipal structure, because that's how you can ensure sustainable and predictable funding for this. We had a policy roundtable in the European Parliament about the review of the EPBD in May, hosted by Comif-Eefmp. And there we were talking about how come that it is the responsibility of NGOs getting some small project money from the EU to establish sustainable solutions. And my friend Kestutis Kupsis used the term first there. I heard that what we need is institutionalize these one-stop shops and resource centers, because that's the only way to make them sustainable long-term. It shouldn't depend our luck whether we get another EU funding or not. I think the other lesson is that it's really, we need to work with the homeowner associations, and you can only start talking about renovation if there is already some community consensus. If the community is split or there's a conflict, it's a waste of time to start talking about renovations. Okay, and some of our policy recommendations, which I think won't be a big surprise for you after all these 25 minutes. That's what we presented in the European Parliament and submitted for the EPBD review. The first one is much more of a provocation than a real legal thing. We think that because of the historic and social reasons, in lack of a well-functioning social housing system in these countries, the owner-occupied multi-apartment buildings in many cases play the function of social housing, and that's why they need the same policy and funding attention as if it was the social housing stock in other countries of Europe. Another recommendations we are having is that we need mixed financing models, which means that we shouldn't be afraid of lower subsidy rates and higher cost by the homeowners. It's better to have long-term predictable low subsidy rates than very high subsidy for 6 months and then nothing for the next 5 years, because that's really killing the demand and the market. Because if the subsidy is very big, then this is a lottery. If you can get it, you win, and then you won't start the renovations because you are waiting for the next lottery. That's why we are proposing that 20–30% of subsidy should be enough, and it should be sustainable, long-term, predictable, and there should be other ways to find the financing of the renovation. And it is also crucial because of this that banking finance for homeowner associations should be available. This is a good practice in many countries, but it's still not widespread enough. In Central European countries, a couple of years ago, commercial banks started to give loans for homeowner associations without a mortgage, but based on the cash flow of the homeowner association. If they screened the cash flow and the cash flow was healthy, then the banks realized that homeowner associations are trustworthy borrowers because they don't run away. They will be there. It's not like an individual. And we are promoting that more loans like this should be available on the market. And then I think it's speaking to the, how the English say that, singing to the choir or something like that, that it's all about these one-stop shops. Our addition is that we believe that technical assistance should include this social facilitation. Usually when we talk about technical assistance and the technical advice a one-stop shop is offering, it's usually about finance, about technical issues. We believe that in the case of owner-occupied multi-apartment buildings, especially in big communities, somebody has to do this social facilitation. It has to be paid, and it should be part of the subsidy system. Who pays for the bill for this? The good news is that paying for a social worker, a facilitation to work with a homeowner association is peanuts compared to the cost of a deep renovation of a big building. It's much more of an understanding and and political will issue than a cost issue. Okay, we also were shortlisted for the USF Awards. There's a short video in the presentation. Sorry, I won't play this. Up. I went too far. Yeah, and this is our contacts. And thank you, and very happy to answer your questions.
Thanks a lot. So now the floor is open for questions. Maybe there's a question here.
Thanks, George. A geographical correction. You forgot Estonia. So it goes from Estonia to Serbia. I'm Len Milic. I'm with the University of Tartu in Estonia. It's not our project, but in fact the project of one of our implementing partners in Tartu for CCAPs. But they also were involved in these HOA and in multi-apartment renovations. What I just wanted to share a couple of things that came out of it, because I think it's very innovative. In order to bring the HOAs on board, they asked a more general question about renovation than just energy renovation. And it turned out that many of those apartments, like the ones you showed for Lithuania, they're exactly like that, the Khrushchevkas, yeah? They wanted balconies. And so because of all the work that was necessary, the add-on of the balconies actually was very little extra, but it brought a lot of buy-in. The other thing is that they ran a competition on the blank wall for mural art. So any HOA that agreed to go through it got essentially a free mural that the city paid for, and it performs a beautifying function, of course. And the HOAs become very proud of their mural. So if they look at the one next door and it's blue, they don't want a blue one, they want an orange one. So it worked out from a psychological perspective very neatly.
Thank you. I just want to react to this, that also in the last couple of years, we understood that when we want to convince people about the energy efficiency renovations, then probably we shouldn't start talking about energy efficiency, but we should start talking about a lot of other things, like your building will be more beautiful. It will have more value on the market. You will feel more comfortable in your house. And then once you started to build up the case, then you can start talking about reducing the bill, CO2 emission, stuff like this. But you shouldn't start with the technical part, which is our interest. But yeah, absolutely agree.
Are there any other questions? The gentleman in the back.
Yes, hello, greetings from Estonia. I have a questions regarding the deepness of the renovation. Is it similar all over the partner countries, or what do you consider deep renovations? Because I had this kind of click that when the most vulnerable group is old ladies, basically, then the ventilation system must have real importance there due to the health issues and etc.
Yeah, we don't have a one fit for all solution for the technical part, and I think we have to stay in realistic limits. So probably in many cases we won't be able to go for deep renovation because it simply won't be affordable for the target group. But may I ask you, Dragomir, to comment on this, because you were part of you were leading the technical effort.
Thank you. I was actually leading the financial effort, but that's a question that I could also tackle and challenge you a little bit on that as well, because, yeah, listening to your presentation, there were too many yes buts that I just wanted to jump in, and I was wondering what would be the best reaction from the experience on the ground. And at that moment, I think that the best reaction is actually that what we learned through these 2 years of experience working with the people is that actually it's not the energy poor that are the ones that object to renovation. We usually think that the energy poor are the blocking minority. No, it's not that. Actually, if you approach them with the right argumentation, with explanation on how the energy efficiency measures would benefit them, they became protagonists of energy renovation. And they're mostly people from my generation, mostly people that are more well off, that obstruct the community process. And then you need other arguments to convince them. But on how deep would renovation would be, the answer that the energy poor would like to hear is the deeper, the better. And the better health conditions you provide in the buildings, the better. So we do need to be very clear. And also, by the way, that's a conclusion that we had from some focus group that we did with energy poor people. They need to be explained what would be the benefits and precisely what would be the health impact if they are to be in. If you get that right, you get the battle won over. And then again, of course, that combined with the financial argumentation, sorry for taking a little bit more time, but I think it is also important to know, indeed, having excessive subsidy rates is proving to be counterproductive. And also having no subsidy rates is also obviously counterproductive. So we need to strike the balance, considering the national traditions, and to involve, of course, the financial institutions providing the right protection for the vulnerable, so that this is not that's not an objection from their side, but that's manageable. That's not something that would prevent a large rollout of these programs. The one thing is going down to the people, talking to them, providing the right argumentation.
Thanks a lot. There's a question over here.
Hello, Maria Laguna from CINEA. I was wondering, so hearing, so just one person can block a decision of a homeowner association. Is there any way that we can change that? Is the project looking into how homeowner associations work, and whether we cannot just go for a majority voting, for example? Is there something you are, what should be done in that case?
I will give my Kestutis will answer. I think this is an extreme case. Usually in the legislation, it's 60% or 50+1 or 70. I use this as an extreme example.
Yeah, as it was referred to the Lithuanian case. So it was not just like voting in the General Assembly, yeah, of the homeowners, when you definitely have some veto power or some majority rule or something. Yeah, like in our case, it was a little bit more complicated because it was already, the decision was already on the table, and a person blocking it was not blocking it because of the veto power. There was some other issues on the way, like he was owning a huge amount of the floor space because of commercial type. Yeah, so that was different obstacle, not related to the veto power, but that was in his hands, and we could not go through that simple step because of him not signing something. Yeah, which was of technical nature. Yeah, and essentially it was necessary for some outsider to come and to ask the association, what's going on? Why everything is more or less prepared? Why are you not progressing for the last 2 years? What's stopping you? And they said, no, this guy is not signing some papers. And why is that? Why can't you find some agreement? No, we don't talk with him because we had bad memory, bad history of our relationship. And then, of course, it was up to us to go to that guy and to make things move, because somebody in the middle, a moderator, has to do the work. Yeah, in my country, it's 55% of the, yeah. So it's But sometimes when you come past, when you pass one obstacle, then another one arises, and then somebody has to facilitate all the process.
Are there any other questions? Maybe I will, there's a question over there.
Yeah, one question from me. Thank you very much. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the financing sources or the sources of funding financing that were used, because I am getting a little bit confused when we talk about energy poverty and the definition of energy poverty, and then someone who owns a large commercial area, for example, in a building. And the most difficult part when it comes to thermo-insulating or upgrading residential houses where people really are affected by energy poverty is that they would not be eligible for any bank loans, that they do not often, they really don't have own contribution for any subsidy programs. So this is the main challenge for local authorities as far as I understand. And I wonder if you have worked out some solutions that were able to assist those families that really, or households that really couldn't afford to invest anything upfront.
I will try to answer briefly, and then I will ask again Dragomir, and thanks for being here. So my understanding is that, of course, these are mixed communities living in a big building, sometimes even upper middle class people you can find, because for some reasons, if the location of the building is good, then and then you have the very poor or energy poor people. And of course, in theory, the ideal solution would be to identify the 10 poor people or 10 poor households in the building, and then give the subsidy or the big subsidy only those people, and then the rest should take a loan or pay for their own savings. There are some initiatives which are trying to do that. I think it's in Lithuania that the subsidies related to, if you are eligible for social subsidy anyway, then you will be eligible for the this other special renovation subsidy. But we did some research with some colleagues a couple of years ago, and in Romania, I think 5 years ago, they tried to introduce some targeted subsidy like this. And then the conclusion was that the cost for the government to run a targeted subsidy was more than giving a general subsidy to everyone. So it's not self-evident that running a targeted subsidy is cheaper from a government budget perspective. And I asked Dragomir to add.
All right, that's easier for me if I face the audience at the end. So yeah, it's a key question, and there are different approaches in the different countries. Obviously, in Lithuania, they have the full support for the households that received anyway the social subsidies, the heating subsidies. In Bulgaria, it's the other way around. Every household receives 100% subsidy, but it's obviously limited to a very small number of households, which is also not fair at all. So basically, there should be, as I said, a balanced approach according to the country's circumstances. The one thing that we, for example, pursue in Bulgaria is precisely that differentiated approach, which uses the tradition or the inertia of the existing social system, defining the, I would say, energy poor, but having in mind that we are still using the definition for vulnerable citizens and providing them with increased support, preferential conditions for participating. It's really tough from governmental point of view, but using the existing facilities of the existing social system helps a lot in that. So that content, we have it as a recommendation also on the slides. Combination between energy efficiency measures and social policy measures had to be targeted because, okay, we're telling that there are extra costs on the governmental system, but on the other hand, if you eliminate the need for heating subsidies through renovation, that's savings for the government system. So having that balance, it's very important that it must be done at country level. And hopefully with financial decentralization going through, it's very difficult in our countries because municipalities actually do not have the resources to conduct their own programs. But if we also get that right in the long term, there will be a possibility also for municipality to get involved, to identify the households that need increased support and to provide it in order to secure the large scale rollout of the renovation. Because finally, that's the basic goal, to have more projects, better projects, quickly implemented projects in a short term.
Thank you. There was one last question over there, and then we will close.
Thank you. Mathieu Allo from EIB. Just a question of demographic, actually, because we know that this country population is decreasing, and we have as well urbanization. So maybe, I mean, first question, if you were confronted with a problem of empty flats or too much less population on perspective in the long run, and if you, how you face it.
I think not in this project. We deal with empty flats from a social housing perspective, but not specifically with the energy efficiency perspective. I think because still an empty flat has an owner in most cases, and they have a vote in the process. So an empty flat is different when it comes to homeowners making a decision on investing than utilizing empty flats for social housing, for example, through social rental agencies. But I don't know if my colleagues have any experience or thoughts on how empty flats play a role in this whole ecosystem. But it's true in many of these countries, there is a shrinking demography and lots of empty property, even in urban centers.
Okay, would you like to comment? No? Okay, so we will keep it here. I would like to thank Georgi for his excellent presentation. Thank you for being here and for your interesting questions. I think Comact is a fantastic project. I think you really highlighted the structuring role of homeowner associations and also the need for the social facilitation that really is key to make these projects happen. Thanks a lot. And now, if you want, there's the last closing plenary over there at the end of the corridor. Thanks a lot and have a good end of the day. Bye.